what is top in your mind when it comes to eating?
So what are we having for dinner? Is it rice, pasta, or bread? Because that's basically what I lived on. So I must be honest, it was a very challenging time.
In the past, we used to have this adage of you eat for two, and we know that that is not necessary. You know, that you don't need equivalent of two persons' calories.
No. To me, you've got to just eat what your body's craving. If you can't stomach a whole bowl of veggies, which I couldn't, I didn't often feel hungry. Because I think that's something that also really worried me was, I'm not having enough protein.
We know that when the protein levels drop in a mom's diet, she can be at risk of kind of early placenta decline, which is not so great because that could induce early delivery or a baby that's not growing adequately. Am I giving my baby enough nutrition when you are feeling that nausea and that sort of thing? And I think, just from a professional point of view, what is really comforting to know is that the body almost knows that. Hi everyone, today we're at Let's Talk Baby and I'm Kath McGaw. I'm a pediatric dietitian, joined again by Sammy Hammond. She's a speech pathologist specializing in pediatric feed-in therapy. Hi Sammy.
Hi Kath.
So nice to see you again.
Yeah, and you. Thank you.
So just remind us how far are you in your pregnancy?
So I am currently 23 weeks with a little girl, our first baby.
Oh, that's so exciting. So today I'm really looking forward to our chat today because we're going to talk about nutrition during pregnancy, which can be quite a difficult thing for, new moms and to navigate. And there's also so much information out there and always not sure what information is good information, what isn't. And then you've also obviously got all the hormones and you obviously through your first trimester of pregnancy. So you passed that stage. Maybe just briefly give us a little bit of that first trimester before we go into kind of the next phase where you are. Just how did you navigate the feelings of nausea, and were you nauseous during that time, and how did you manage your nutrition in that time?
Yeah, so I must be honest, it was a very challenging time just because I have the knowledge of nutrition and I know what I should be getting. And during that time, I wasn't getting pretty much any of it, any of the good nutrition, which was stressful because I kind of kept thinking to myself, well, what am I giving my baby if I can't get in any of the good nutritious food that I know I'm supposed to be having? I was lucky in that I wasn't ever physically sick. So I was nauseous, and the nausea for me hit the worst at night. So I found that I could get a really good, decent breakfast in. So I think that's where I put my focus was, okay, let me try and get as much nutrients in that I can during breakfast. Lunch was okay. It started to then set in there. So it was a bit of a touch and go. And then dinners was an absolute write-off. I remember my husband saying to me, so what are we having for dinner? Is it rice, pasta, or bread? Because that's basically what I lived on. And I think I actually had a chat to my mom about it. And I said, jeepers, I don't think that, is this even good that I'm just living on like potatoes and, bland, really not nutritionally dense foods? And she just said to me, you've got to just eat what your body's craving. If you can't stomach a whole bowl of veggies, which I couldn't, then you've just got to listen to your body because otherwise that's just going to make you feel worse, So it was a bit of a mindset change for me because I thought, I had to kind of say, well, I'm just going to eat what I can. Obviously, a big thing was I didn't often feel hungry. So that was also important to me, was to try and keep meals. Because I was very cognizant of skipping meals. I didn't want to do that. So even if I had my toast with butter, at least it was something. So I think it was difficult because the nausea was bad. It was no joke, and I was working full time. So it was also challenging. Nobody really knows you're pregnant. You're feeling really horrible. You're quite tired. So my main symptoms were the nausea and then just a little bit of fatigue. I think if I compare to friends and colleagues that have been pregnant, I feel like I came off quite lightly compared to some of them.
Yeah.
But it was a real challenge. And luckily for me, around the start of my second trimester, I started to really be able to start eating normally again, which I was super thankful for, because I know a lot of women in pregnancy struggle for quite a while, that they go on with aversions or nausea or vomiting. So I think I did come off lightly. It was horrible, but I got through it.
Shame. Yeah, I do remember you recalling some of those moments to me. And you know what? I think what you mentioned, which I think is so resonant of so many moms out there, is that the feeling of, am I giving my baby enough nutrition, when you are feeling that nausea and that sort of thing. And I think, just from a professional point of view, what is really comforting to know is that the body almost knows that. And in the first trimester, your baby lives primarily off the yolk sac. So it actually has most of its nutrition already on board. And so the nutrition is more for the mom during that time, which is super important, but it's not really putting your baby at extreme harm if you're struggling to take in the ideal meal plan in a day. And that is also quite comforting, I think, for a lot of moms out there who really do struggle. And I love the advice your mom gave, is like, listen to your body. And then also, I think, being cognizant of trying to eat regularly, because we know that a lot of pregnancy nausea is due to low blood sugar. And so if you can keep that blood sugar up, then it's really helpful just to manage the extra nausea symptoms, and kind of doing, as your mom said, whatever that takes to keep that blood sugar going is really helpful, knowing that your baby is largely protected. And I think the most important nutrient is your folic acid, which is known, and people in care generally are taking that even prior to falling pregnant. Moms know that when they want to fall pregnant, they need to start taking it. So folic acid being the most important. And I often even say to moms, you don't even need to take any of your other prenatal supplements during your first trimester, because they can actually make you more nauseous. And with all the vitamin Bs and the omegas and that you can wait until this next season, which is now our next kind of area that we're going to chat about, is now at this 23-week mark. What are some of the nutritional ideas that you are kind of thinking about, and what is top in your mind when it comes to eating now that you're feeling better and you're looking at what do you eat? So what's like a typical day of eating in Sammy's life?
So now I think I'm really trying to make up for that first trimester lack of nutrition, because I don't have any aversions now. I can pretty much eat anything. I try and keep as balanced of meals as I can. So I do look at the sort of like nutrient content and be like, have I had some fruit in this today, or have I got some fruit or veg in this meal? The nature of my work makes it quite difficult, because I'm often eating on the go. So what I try and do is then just pack a little lunchbox that I've got some fruit and a little fruit and nut bar. So I don't, especially for lunch, get really nice, not full meals, but it's often like not snacky stuff, but like quick, easy things, So then I'll make myself like a seeded roll, and I'll put on, and I always think to myself, okay, have I got a dairy? Have I got a veg? What is my healthy carbs? So I'm looking more like holistically at my meals and making sure I'm ticking all those nutrient boxes. Something that was big for me is I couldn't have any form of meat in my or not protein, because I guess protein comes in other forms, but more meat protein I couldn't have in my first trimester. I just couldn't stomach it. So I'm also being quite cognizant of my protein intake at this stage, because I think that's something that also really worried me was, I'm not having enough protein, and I know protein is such an important nutrient. So that's something that I've also been trying to focus a lot on is getting more protein in, which is also more challenging than you think, without doing like a protein shake or that type of a thing. So I think it's just been frequent meals. So especially being on the go, having my nachi or fruit in my bag, so while I'm driving between hospitals or between patients, to have something quickly, so that, like you said, maintaining your blood sugar is very important. And I can feel when I'm going into a blood sugar drop, because I naturally can do. And so even more so now in pregnancy, I'm being cognizant that I don't get into that cycle where I've left myself too long without having something because it's so busy, and then I have that blood sugar drop and start feeling actually quite terrible. So I'd say it's the content of my meals that I'm focusing on, and then also the frequency of meals, trying to keep it as frequent as possible.
Okay, I love that. And I love that you kind of are looking at, okay, what I didn't have in that first trimester. And like I say, that's largely actually for your body to replenish from the first trimester. However, now your baby is starting to rely on the nutrients that you are eating. So it does become really important, as you've mentioned. And I think that, again, the frequency of eating is so important because you are constantly feeding this little human. In the past, we used to, had this adage of you eat for two, and we know that that is not necessary, that you don't need equivalent of two persons' calories.
No.
And so you want adequate weight gain, but you don't want excessive weight gain because it's not healthy for you, obviously, as a mom or for your baby, to have that excessive amount of calories, which your body often converts just into a lot of glucose. So, but what is so important, I love that you mentioned protein, because protein is what feeds your placenta, which is obviously what your baby is going to thrive on. So we know that when the protein levels drop in a mom's diet, she can be at risk of kind of early placenta decline, which is not so great because that could induce early delivery or a baby that's not growing adequately. So let's talk about some fun elements with regards to pregnancy nutrition and the benefits that we now know. And this also in your field of pediatric feed-in therapy is obviously so important, is that the foods that you are tasting and trying and eating as your baby grows and as you move from the second trimester into your third trimester, your baby's going to start swallowing that amniotic fluid. And as she does that, she's going to start experiencing these flavors. So what sort of foods are you going to be very aware, knowing kind of what potential feed-in therapy issues are around, that you would like to include in your diet just to expose your little girl to that?
Yeah. I love that because I when I was in that first trimester and living on the bread, the pasta, and the potatoes, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a child that's just going to eat the typical bland food diet that I work with so many kids on, and my child's going to live on that because this is all I'm having. So luckily, I think I would stress a lot more if that was all I was having the rest of my pregnancy. But I think the thing is it's all about variety. So again, I think to myself, she's getting what I'm eating and she's tasting what I'm eating. And like you said, there's a lot of studies about that and the sort of exposure that our babies get in utero to what we're eating. And so I think I've really tried to think variety when I'm eating now. So also from a flavor perspective, not just eating plain veggies or something not necessarily bland, but I'm trying to do a lot more like flavorsome foods. I'm not a big curry eater, but exposing her to curry. So I think it's all about exposure, because I just think to myself, okay, well, if she's getting it now, then hopefully when she's here with us and starting weaning and starting on solids, she'll be used to these flavors and these tastes, and maybe be quite intrigued by them because it's something that she's like, oh, okay, I remember my mom ate this and when I was in her tummy. So yeah, I think in our family, because it's so busy, we often stick to like those are our meals, like we'll have a burger or we'll have a pasta, and I think we can sometimes lack variety. So our weekly meals can be kind of like on repeat, like a spaghetti bolognese or something. So I think it's also just been like, okay, well, let me just try and expose it to things that maybe I don't normally eat, but that's just different, and all with the aim of building like a diverse flavor profile for her. So I think it's just being cognizant of that, which is not always easy, because life happens and you just carry on and you kind of stick to your default same easy meals. So yeah, it's trying to get a little bit more creative in the kitchen, which I'm not very good at. So this is a good way to force me to become better.
I love that. And I think, I find sometimes parents will say, please help my child. I don't want them to be a fussy eater like me. And then there's already alarm bells, because obviously if mom was particularly fussy or challenged with different food flavors during pregnancy and breastfeeding, there's obviously less exposure. So I always say to mom, your feeding therapy starts with you, and you need to get your head around that broccoli and that next flavor that you need to get used to. But I think it is a fun journey, and I like the way you say that. It's about fun, and it's about just experimenting, and it doesn't have to take a lot of energy. It really just needs to be just being aware of trying something different. And I think that's really exciting.
And I think like you said, I think especially the moms that are picky eaters themselves, which I'm not a very picky eater, but it doesn't also mean that you have to go and, make these foods that you have to hold your nose and try and get down. Just, you can really be creative with it. And obviously within what you can stomach, but you can add flavors, and you can, cook it in different forms, and there's different ways to get exposure. It's not that you have to kind of force yourself to eat these things that you really hate. I don't think it's it's about that. I think it's about, like you say, getting creative. And even
hiding the flavors, like we talk about with the picky eaters, when you want to expose their taste buds to the broccolis and to those stronger flavors, you can hide them, and you can do that as a mom, hide it in your bolognese sauce. If you didn't normally add a veggie to the bolognese sauce, do that, and then your taste buds, and you might even surprise yourself as you get different exposure to that. So just as we come into kind of wrapping up today's chat, I just want to talk about something that just can be quite contentious, just with regards to allergens. Do you have any allergies to any foods at all?
And not now as an adult, which is actually an interesting question, Kath, because I actually haven't thought about allergies. But my sister and I were, my sister had quite a lot of eczema. And both of us, I remember my mom as young girls, taking us off dairy. So we kind of went dairy free, because we had quite a lot of like postnasal, and that type of thing. Now as an adult, I'm actually fine. But as a child, that's something that I remember my mom struggled quite a lot with both of us. We went on goat's milk, and then we went on this, I remember, all these different types of milks to try and help us. But it wasn't like a cow's milk protein allergy or something like that. It was more just the bunged upness and the sinuses. I'm funny enough allergic to honey when it touches my skin, but I do eat it.
Okay,
so that's an interesting one. Yeah, I just mustn't touch my skin, but it can go into my body weirdly. But yeah, funny. Other than that, no allergens.
So I think that's really just an important thing to mention, is that, it's so important that with your family history of childhood allergies and your sister's eczema, it's really important more than ever that your little girl is exposed to all the allergens while she's in the womb. So you need to eat as many of the allergen foods like nuts and peanuts and fish and eggs and wheat and dairy and soya. Those are top in South Africa. Corn is also becoming really a big one here. So corn, and you really want to include those in your diet, especially in your second, third trimester. You really want to make sure you include those. Obviously, if you were still highly allergic to peanuts or cow's milk protein, we would not want you to include that. So we don't ever want to put mom at risk. So with no anaphylaxis or issues with mom. But you can, if you're not allergic to it, please include everything that you can possibly do, because that will actually protect your baby. So just for the last kind of few seconds, I'm just going to really just wrap up. Just eat healthy like you've been doing. You've been having frequent meals. You've been managing foods from all the food groups. So no fad dieting. It's really important. Good starches are as important as good fats and proteins. And just to expose your baby to as many tastes and flavors as what you can do. I don't know if you've got one last 10-second just little point for a mom out there.
I think so. I follow quite a lot of social media sites, Instagram sites, where it's moms in the same journey as what I am, and I think I remember in my first trimester, I'd see these moms downing like green juices and having all of that. And that to me I used to think, oh my word, here I am sitting with my toast and here's this mom like packing in the nutrients. And I think just it's your own journey. I think that was a thing for me is, do what you can do, be cognizant of like you say, the nutritional aspect of your meals, within reason when you can. If you're feeling terrible, just go with what your body is telling you and what you're craving, and it's you listen to your body. Your body's talking to you and saying what it needs, but it's your journey. Don't compare to somebody else who's feeling very different to how you are, who's had their own struggles to what you've had, and just go with what your body needs.
I love that. So that today concludes this podcast on Let's Talk Baby with myself, Kath McGaw, and Sammy Hammond. And we were really excited to bring you this chat about pregnancy nutrition, which is so important. But as Sammy said, you're good enough and what you're eating is good enough. So just keep trying, keep eating healthy. It's for your benefit, for your baby's benefit, but enjoy the journey, and it's your individual journey, and that's most important.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kath.
Okay. Thanks. Hey. Bye, Sammy.